Hello everyone and welcome to this third episode in this chess puzzle series, and we have some interesting puzzles for you today. Some easier, some a little more difficult, so let's see if you are able to solve them. Alright, these will all be white to move in all these puzzles. So this first one, what would you do here with white to move? It's kind of a tricky little position. We see that at this point, the black king is stalemated, but it's white's turn to move. So what do you do to keep black from stalemating in this position? How do you go in for the win? All right. Well, as always, pause the video if you need more time to think. If not, let's take a look at this. I'll turn on the analysis. Here it says there is a mate in 3, and it's a little tricky, but hopefully you were able to figure it out. All right, so the key move is bishop to f6 here. So now the only move that is possible is to capture that bishop like this. But that allows king to f8 here. And now the only move available is to just push this pawn. And of course that allows knight to f7 mate. So hopefully you found that. It was a little tricky and kind of a unusual position. But in the end, white mates his opponent. All right. Let's move on to the second puzzle here. All right. Okay, and hopefully you didn't just see the answer, which I should have tried to cover more quickly. All right. Well, in this position, once again, white to move. What would you do here with white? And this is a little tricky, so take a look at it. If you need more time, pause the video to check it out. If not, let's take a look here. All right. If we look at the analysis, it looks like a mate in 4 is possible here. And the winning move is this king to c1 move, which, if we go back to the beginning, in this position, once again, black is stalemated. This pawn is trying to march up here, but the king is blocking it. The knight cannot move because of the rook pinning the knight, and the king cuts off the escape here. But after king to c1, excuse me, if I go back here. So even the computer had difficulties with this one because now it is showing that it is a mate in 3 with rook to d2. So we'll look at king to c1 as well. But rook to d2 is the fastest way to win here. And if you would have knight captures on d2 here, well, then there are 2 different ways for a mate in 2. We could have knight to c1, and this knight will have to move away. And right now the knight is covering this checkmating square here for the knight, the white knight. So once that knight moves away, we have knight to b3 here for the win. So that is one option. So if we go back to the beginning here, all right. So we were looking at rook to d2, and instead of capturing, another option might be knight to a3 check. Well, then the king can just move here to b3 and threaten a mate with this with this rook to d1. If we had this rook to knight to b1 blocking, well then the rook could just capture over here as well and mate. So that's another possibility in this position. If I go back and look at this king to c1 move, maybe you were looking at that as well. Well, then we have knight to c3, and then different options here, but knight to d4 is one of them, threatening a mate here on b3. And then after knight to e2, king to c2, then one final try to block here, but then the rook could capture, or the knight could move up here to b3. So anyway, different options there to go in for the win in this initial position. So hopefully you were able to figure that out. All right, let's move on to the next problem. I'll try and cover these lines here. And so problem or chess puzzle number 3. All right. So here we have white to move once again. What is the winning move in this position? So see if you can figure that out. And as always, pause the video if you need more time. All right, if you're ready, I'll turn on the evaluation and the analysis. All right, so we have a mate in 3 here. So have you already found it, or do you still need more time? All right, let's take a look at the lines. So here, the best move is a surprising queen sacrifice for a mate in 3. So here, queen to e8 forces the king to capture. But then this leads to knight to f6, driving the king back to this square, and a follow-up with knight to f7 mate. So hopefully you were able to find that. An interesting little queen sacrifice. All right, let's move on to chess puzzle number 4. Okay. In chess puzzle number 4, once again, white to move here. This one shouldn't be too difficult, and pause the video if you need more time. If not, let's take a look. So hopefully you found the first move, and it'll be a mate in 3. And the best move here is queen captures with check. So, this is fairly obvious. Then the king can only go up here to g8. But now, what would be the best follow-up? Well, queen to g5 check, and the king has to move and can only go to the h file on h8 or h7. But then we have mate with the rook to h6. All right, so that one was a little easier. Hopefully you were able to find that one. Let's take a look at problem or puzzle number 5 here. All right, puzzle number 5. Okay, white to move here. What would you do in this position? What is the winning move? All right, as always, pause the video if you need more time. If not, let's take a look. All right. The evaluation says a mate in 1. So hopefully you found this mate in 1. It could be a little tricky. It involves a pawn promotion, but instead of to a queen, which is the second best move, there's a mate in 1 by promoting this pawn to a knight here. So f8 promotion, not to a queen. But if you promote this, if we go back here, if you promote to a knight here, it would lead to mate, as the bishop is cutting off these dark squares, and the knight attacks the king and cuts off this light square on g6. All right, well, hopefully you were able to find that one, and we'll move on to the final 6th puzzle here. And this one will be a little more tricky. So hopefully you will be able to find the answer. All right. So here, white to move. How does white go about winning this game? And, this is a little tricky. If you just have a king and a knight versus a lone king, it's a draw, as you don't have enough material to win. But things are different when you have this rook pawn here blocking the path of the king. So it's white's turn to move here. So, how would you begin this series of moves that lead to a checkmate? So pause the video if you need to think. You'll probably need to think a little bit harder on this one, as it's a little tricky. But let's take a look here. All right. A mate in 9 is what the computer says is the quickest way to do it here. But hopefully you'll see that the first move is to just move this king over here to F3. So king to F3. Now the only move available is this right here. King moving into H1. And then we have king to F2, which forces the king back up here to H2. And then now the king must reposition itself. So let's see. In this example, I have a king to F1 move as well. But let's take a look at this knight to D4 move. Well, first of all, I'll just go through what I have. So king to F1, king has to move, knight to G3 check, the king moves back up, the knight moves up here and does not move the king to F2, or that would have been a stalemate. So now the king is forced to move back. The white king just moves up here, cutting off these squares. And as the king moves up, we have knight to E3. And the knight is moving into position as the king moves up here. Well, now we have the knight moving to F1, and that cuts off this H2 square for the king, forcing the pawn forward, and then the knight will move up here and deliver a mate. So that's a little tricky. If you know what you're trying to do to position the knight here to force the pawn forward, and then you're able to move the knight up and deliver mate, and have your king here on F2 to cut off any escape. If once you see this, hopefully if you ever have to do something like this in a game, you'll be able to pull it off. But I recommend just taking another look at this little combination here of moves and see how this was done, because it is a little bit tricky. All right, well, I won't dig too much deeper into this position. You can just take a look at it, or better yet, set it up on a board and fool around with that position. And hopefully you can learn it, and it'll help you if you ever come across it in any of your games. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this third episode in this chess puzzles series. Remember to study your tactics to improve your chess. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.